Welcome back to the third episode of the podcast, Just Talking with Leo. Now, if you already haven't noticed, there's a brand new intro. I decided to shorten it a little bit since a lot of people were complaining to me about the 2 minute long intro. So, boom, there's one change to the podcast already. Now, this podcast was supposed to come out on Tuesday at 8 a.m. I'm recording this on Tuesday exactly at 4:20. But I'm just gonna give it to you guys blank. The episode I recorded on Monday was just absolutely terrible. I don't think I said one funny joke on that episode. It was also only 30 minutes long without me even editing, so it would have been like a 15-minute long podcast. That's not really the length of a podcast. But yeah, that episode was absolutely atrocious. My plan for this episode was to maybe react to that last episode, but I don't think I have the gall to do that. Maybe if I'm sick for like a week, I might just post it and then watch the dislikes come in, but we're not just going to talk about that in today's episode. I also want to talk about the two past episodes we've done. I think the very first episode, I think it went very well. A lot of people liked it. And then the second episode, at least on YouTube, didn't do too well, but I don't really care about the views. I don't care if this podcast gets 0 views or millions of views. I really don't care. I'm just doing this for me and to entertain people. So hopefully this is very entertaining. But I also get a lot of comments about friends, family, about the second episode and how it was people either liked it a lot, how it was just focused on one topic, or people thought it was like okay, or they thought it was meh because I just kind of talked about food for 40 minutes or so, or 38 minutes or so. I think that was the length of the podcast. Probably even less. I really don't remember. And so from now on, I'm gonna try to make the podcast about a bunch of different topics. I'm gonna bring pop culture, foods, all that shit into a podcast episode instead of just talking about one thing, because me just talking about food for 40 minutes to some people is entertaining, to some isn't. So I'm going to try to make as most people as I can happy. And so, yeah, I'm going to be making sure to broaden the topics on each episode of this podcast from now on. And to start this podcast, I'd figured a food rant should suffice. And so for this first food rant, I wanted to talk about cookies versus brownies versus cakes. These are all the things that if you ever baked in your life, you probably baked all three of these things, and it's pretty hard to make a perfect one of these things. And everyone's had a cookie or a brownie or a cake homemade or even store bought or however else you get these things. But I think out of these three juggernauts, I should say, I think one reigns supreme, and I think that is the cookie. I think the cookie is the best out of these three, personally by a landslide, because I think it tastes absolutely the best at its peak compared to these three, and also is by far the easiest to make, homemade, I would say, out of these three. I also want to say the cookie by far has the most variation out of all three of these desserts by far. You can get so many different types of cookies. You can get a sugar cookie or a chocolate chip, or like you can do even more variations with just chocolate chunk. You just got macadamia nut. There's so many variations of a cookie and possibly a cake, but a brownie really doesn't have that many variations. I also think brownie is by far the worst out of these three. It's the hardest out of these three to make perfect, I would say. The cake's kind of boring, I should say. Even if you make the best cake in the world, the most moist cake, you need frosting. Same thing goes with a brownie. While cookies, you really don't need frosting. You don't really put frosting on cookies. You do for Christmas cookies, I should say. You do put frosting on cookies. Frosting isn't essential on a cookie. well, you definitely need it on a brownie and a cake for it to be even comparable to a cookie. Another thing about cakes is if a cake is dry, it's just not good. You can have a hard cookie and that cookie still taste good, or even a hard brownie and it tastes better than a cake. The only advantage a cake has to a cookie is that you can pair a cake is more fancy than a cookie, I should say. You can eat like cakes at weddings and all that stuff, right? Well, you can't really eat a cookie or a brownie at a wedding. There's no cookie wedding. Or like a out of the three by far, cake is the most fancy. But and brownie is probably the lowest class and cookies probably the middle class. I'm going to be honest out of these three. I just think that there is nothing that can beat a fresh out of the oven cookie, even even a cookie that wasn't made, a very simple chocolate chip cookie fresh out of the oven is better than a top of the line moist chocolate cake, vanilla cake, any type of cake, or especially brownie out of the oven. So recently I've been rewatching The Batman with Robert Pattinson. And I know a lot of people love Christian Bale's Batman for his trilogy. I do too. I like those movies. I think they're some of the greatest movies ever made. But purely off this first movie alone, and since they are gonna make two more Robert Pattinson movies, I think, at least of now, Robert Pattinson is the best Batman. I know a lot of people are gonna argue with me about this, especially all the DC nerds, as I am a DC nerd, about this. I just think that the movie itself is by far better than The Dark Knight, which some consider to be the best out of the trilogy, of the Christopher Nolan trilogy. And I think it's good. I do think that The Dark Knight is very overrated, I would say. It's not bad by any means. It's just it's not the greatest. I think the intro to that movie is pretty good. The whole surprise and all. If you haven't seen it, make sure to see that movie. But the whole just the cinematography on the Batman is some of the best cinematography I've ever seen in all of movies. I wouldn't consider myself a movie buff, but I've seen a lot of movies that people consider near perfect, and I've seen a lot of movies in general that are maybe like spoofs, or I've seen all types of movies, right? And I've never seen a movie with that good of cinematography ever. I also think if you're just gonna compare the intro and the Batman is far more suspenseful and shocking and surprising compared to the Dark Knight. I also think the villain. I know this is going to be very controversial. I do think that Heath Ledger's Joker is in fact second to Mark Hamill. If you don't know who Mark Hamill is, he's Luke Skywalker. But if you don't know, when he played the Joker in the Batman animated TV series. And so I think and the games or whatever. So I think he's by far the best sounding Joker. And I think definitely Heath Ledger is number two. But I do think, God, give me a second. I need to find his name of the Riddler. Paul Dano, I'm pretty sure. I don't even need to look that up. Paul Dano, I think, plays a fantastic role in the Batman. And I think his role of a villain in the Batman series as the Riddler is a better acting performance. Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. I think kind of feel bad for Paul Dano's character, the Riddler, unlike Heath Ledger's character, the Joker. You can see why he feels this way and why he does the things that he does in that movie compared to the Joker in The Dark Knight, where you kind of, I'm going to say this, spoilers, you kind of don't know where he's from. There's no really backstory to his character, even though there usually isn't, but there's usually more of a reason why he did these things or that he's the way he is. I also think just even the side characters in the Batman kind of outweighs the side characters in the Dark Knight as well. I think Gordon by far is better in the Batman movie compared to the Dark Knight because even though it's the very first movie, you can see more of a friendship and a better like almost like brotherly love, I would say, in the Batman compared to the Dark Knight. I also think that I know this wasn't in The Dark Knight, but in The Dark Knight Rises, spoiler if you haven't seen that movie, Catwoman is played in both the Batman and The Dark Knight Rises, and I think Catwoman in the Batman is far head and shoulders better than the Catwoman. I think Anne Hathaway's portrayal of Catwoman is far, far worse than Zoe Kravitz's portrayal of Catwoman. I'm a big hater of Anne Hathaway. I don't really like how she acts. So you might see a little bias towards me, but I think Zoe Kravitz is a much better actor than Anne Hathaway. I think she knows how to play more of a mysterious character than Anne Hathaway does. I also might have some recency bias since the Batman didn't come out. It's not that recent, but like several months ago compared to the Dark Knight trilogy. Also, if you're gonna compare both the Batmans, Robert Pattinson's Batman and Christian Bale's Batman, I would give it to you the fact that Christian Bale's Batman is a lot better of a Bruce Wayne than is Robert Pattinson. But when it comes to the Batman aspect, I think Pattinson blows him out of the water, especially for his first movie. I can also argue with you to the fact that in this movie was basically about Batman. It wasn't really about Bruce Wayne compared to the Batman Begins or even the rest of the Dark Knight trilogy where it plays heavily focused on Bruce Wayne's character. I used to whenever I'm on YouTube, I would always watch Conan O'Brien, Conan O'Brien, because I think he's by far the best late night host out of all of them. I think he's the most funny, witty, and he actually cares about the person he's interviewing. Unlike, let's say, a Jimmy Fallon or a James Corden, especially. I hate James Corden. If anyone says James Corden's better than as Conan, or let alone anyone else, I don't like you as a person. But if I had to rank all of the late night hosts, or not late night hosts, just talk show hosts in general, the big like four I would say is Conan, then Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, then James Corden. Now I know I'm missing some names like Trevor Noah and I think Seth Meyers and there's a couple more Colbert, but they definitely go ahead of James Corden, but I don't feel like listing all of them. So out of the main four, Conan's definitely the best. So I live next to like an Arby's and I've lived in Minnesota basically my whole life in this part of Minnesota past like 6 years I would say, or actually yeah 5 6 years. And so I would always, whenever my parents would drive me or whatever, I would always see an Arby's or whatever whenever near where I live, right? And so I've only ever been inside of an Arby's less than 2 times, and every time I went there I regretted it. I just plain don't like Arby's. I think it's probably the worst successful fast food restaurant ever, I would say. I would rather go to a Taco Bell, which I'm not even a big Taco Bell type of guy, over an Arby's. I'm more of a Chipotle guy. I'm willing to fight Chipotle over Taco Bell any day. But what makes Arby's like one of the worst restaurants is the fact it's just kind of it's like if like a Burger King and like a shitty Quiznos kind of teamed up together and just presented you with a style of food, I should say. And the only good thing about Arby's is the curly fries, I would say. The curly fries are very good. Some of the best fries, I think, in like the burger game, even though they don't even make burgers, but in the I don't even know what to call Arby's. It's not, I guess, a sandwich. So it's a sandwich game. But the thing about Arby's curly fries is they're at grocery stores. So if you ever look in the freezer aisle in like the potato section or whatever, you can see an Arby's bag of curly fries. So since they're already at grocery stores, why would you ever need to go to an Arby's after that? I'm not usually a morning eating person, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I usually eat food in the morning, it's either gonna be McDonald's or cereal. And for at least the cereal department, I only eat sugary cereals. I know if you can probably tell if you just look at my body that I only eat sugary cereals. But honestly, I think healthy cereals are just some of the worst tasting things ever, if I'm gonna be honest. A healthy cereal has some of the worst textures imaginable. It's like, and the taste. Imagine eating like a crouton and dumping it in milk and just eating a bowl of milky, soggy croutons. That's how I would imagine most healthy cereals. Also, now imagine a couple of raisins in the mix. That's not really gonna make a good cereal, now is it? When it comes to unhealthy cereal, I think one reigns in supreme. I also believe that it's important with a unhealthy cereal that the milk tastes very good, but doesn't overpower the cereal like how in the cinnamon toast crunch that milk I would say overpowers the cereal. I honestly believe Cinnamon Toast Crunch is probably my number two, but is better without milk. I think if you just have Cinnamon Toast Crunch just kind of like by itself and just put it in a bowl and just eat it with your hands or a spoon or whatever, it's going to taste far better than with the added milk. I think it just kind of makes it, instead of makes the cereal just taste worse, I believe, and just adds all that flavor into the milk. Unlike the Fruity Pebbles, which I believe is the best cereal ever. I think it's also probably some of the best looking cereal ever. It looks like a rainbow. I don't know. I don't know how anyone can eat that bland, kind of like brownish looking cereal. In the health department, I mean, the Cinnamon Toast Crunch does look pretty good, but it's just it can get soggy very easily. And I don't mind soggy Fruity Pebbles. I actually like it getting a little soggy for some reason. But soggy Cinnamon Toast Crunch is it's just not as good as a soggy Fruity Pebbles, and that's why I think it's on my number two. I think you gotta include the sog factor and the milk factor, and I do think the milk is way better than the Fruity Pebbles, but it almost like its own thing whenever I have Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Honestly just care about the milk instead of both parts of this cereal. You know what I mean? As you know, Christmas is coming up. Christmas is an okay holiday. I said that in the first episode. If you didn't watch that, please watch the first episode. But honestly, if you're gonna give a gift to someone, just give them a gift card. No one really cares about like special gifts and, oh, I got her the t-shirt that she wanted or blah 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 blah. If that t-shirt, let's say, costed $60, just give them like a $70 Amazon gift card or a $100 Amazon gift card, and that will do just the job. Anything that a person can possibly want is on Amazon, and you can probably get free shipping with it as well. It's just, I would rather someone give me $20 and a $25 Amazon gift card than give me a $20 shirt or a couple pairs of socks and underwear. I think at least with the $25 Amazon gift card, I can think of either gifts to give other people, or at least I can get multiple items for cheaper on Amazon that may not be as good a quality, but at least I can have it. You know what I mean? The worst gift you can probably give someone on Christmas, besides nothing. Also, money is very good too. If you want to just give us money, that's probably even better than even an Amazon gift card. But some of the worst presents you can be gifted. I think socks are a lot better of a gift than underwear. I think underwear is by far the worst because you don't need as much underwear as you do need socks, in my opinion. Go shorter on this topic. I think everyone's talked about this or debated or ranted about this topic I'm about to bring up, and that topic is cats versus dogs or dogs versus cats. And for me, there's only one clear-cut winner, and that is the dog. Dogs are just, they actually care about you, unlike a cat. A cat really doesn't care if you die on the spot. I've seen lots of videos of where like an old lady that owns a cat like dies, and then mere hours later, when people come back wanting to know what's happened to her, they've opened the door and she's being eaten by a cat. You never see that with a dog. Usually dogs are way more sad when their owner dies. Let's say I've seen videos of like an owner has cancer and he dies and he dies, and the dog's in the room with the owner, and the dog's, you can hear the dog crying. I don't think I've ever heard a cat cry in my life that's not from pain. Also, cats are they're just annoying, smug little animals, I believe. You never really see a smug dog, and if it is a smug dog, it usually deserves to be smug because it's like this big behemoth of a dog compared to a cat. I believe, besides the Chihuahua, I think even a Chihuahua takes a cat in a fight. A big Chihuahua can definitely take a big cat in a fight, I believe. But also, dogs can protect you, unlike the cat. You're never gonna get protected by a cat in your life. A cat will gladly let you die on the spot to save its own skin. I also believe cats are just, you never hear a crazy dog lady, but you always hear the crazy cat lady. And I think that's a good correlation with the cat and the dog. I also believe that dogs are just genuinely more cute of an animal. Maybe besides, maybe a baby cat is very cute, but anything past that, it's just kind of not the best looking animal. I think I've seen some hamsters look better than cats. I think birds look better than cats. I think there's a lot of animals. And so the only people I would say that get cats are people that are just too lazy to take care of an animal. So they get a cat, and then eventually they get a dog because they actually want love from an animal, not just bitchiness, I would say, about is how I feel like every movie is getting remakes and remade, and I feel like it just needs to stop. At least for certain movies. Like, take for example, Home Alone. We've all seen Home Alone, a good Christmas movie. And surprisingly, they remade it into the second one, which was very good a couple years later. And now, not to my knowledge, as of December 20th, I did not know that there were 6 Home Alone movies. But today I found out there are 6 of them, and only 2 of them star Macaulay Culkin. And I saw a trailer for the most recent one that came out, and it just made me very unhappy with the world as we see it right now. Some movies don't need to get remade. Like, how many times is that redhead bitch gonna really forget that her child is home alone? You know what I mean? It's just like, at that point, she deserves to have child services on her ass, I think, forever. He deserves a better home, a home where the same 2 guys doesn't need to try to kill him every year. I think that is absolutely bonkers. I also think that they're making 9 Avatar movies now, and I've only seen the first one, and I know the second one just came out, and in order for it to even just make money, it needs to be even, I should say. To break even, it needs to make $2 billion, and so there's no shot in hell that movie's making $2 billion. So thankfully, they're not gonna make any more Avatar movies. Hopefully, it doesn't break 2 billion. There's some movies that I think deserve remakes, or actually, this movie did deserve a remake, but I feel like it's a little too late now. If you ever seen Superbad, I think Superbad 2 would be a great movie. Could take place while these guys are at college or a little after college, and it's expressing their life after the high school years. Another movie, which already has a couple movies that I think deserves one last movie, is Austin Powers. I feel like that movie would be amazing, especially now, the time you're living in, and how you could say anything and get canceled. I think I would love to see how a movie like that would be made as of today. This is probably going to be a shorter episode because I filming this on Tuesday instead of Monday, and I kind of didn't really have any topics on hand. But I just want to say thank you guys for listening to this episode, I should say. If you guys like the podcast, make sure to rate it 5 stars on Spotify. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, make sure to share this podcast with any friends of yours. If you're loving this podcast, I think, and obviously other people deserve to love the podcast too. So make sure to shout it out everywhere you can on Snap stories. If you just want to just talk about it in person, I think that's a very good way. Because I'm only one guy trying to start a podcast here. There's no editors. It's just I'm doing all the work. So I would appreciate all the love I can. And I think that's all. Peace.